I'm the president and CEO of New Memphis. You have joined us for our next installment of our Celebrate What's Right luncheon series, now a virtual luncheon series. For this installment, we're focusing on early education. We have truly a superstar panel put together today, so thank all of you guys for being a part of this. This is such a hugely vital issue to our community, and we have leaders in the space who are going to share what's going well, as the name of this event would imply, where we have room to grow and improve, the impact that this work is having on our city's outcomes for our kids and our community in general. So I'm very excited to hear what our panel has to say. I'm so grateful to each of you for taking the time in the middle of your workday to do a little bit of learning to hopefully be a better advocate and citizen as we think about what we can do for our kids. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Huge gratitude, as always, to our sponsors of this event. The First Horizon Foundation, who's been partnering on this event for over 10 years and has helped us celebrate so many special things happening in our city and have watched, we've been watching our city grow and prosper together. Thank you. To Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, again, longtime friends and investors in New Memphis, supporters of this work. We're just so grateful to have you guys alongside of us as we present these topics. Just a little bit again of housekeeping. We wanted to let you guys know that throughout the event, you can use the Q&A button. So if you've got questions for the panelists, we'll get to that towards the end. So definitely drop those in as we go. When you exit the event, you will see a pop-up survey, as you see on your screen now. This is really important to us. It's one of our key focuses that we not just put on what we think is great work, but we ask you guys if it's work that matters to you, if you left today learning something new, something that impacts the way that you're going to lead in our community. So please take a time. It really takes less than a minute to take that survey. We'll also send you an email after the event. If you prefer to find that link in your email, you can do the survey then. I'd also just like to thank, we're going to get to this in a minute, but this is a special day because we're also going to celebrate our Educators of Excellence for 2020. These are 5 just superstar high-performing teachers who are leading with innovation in each of their classrooms and in their schools. So I'm excited to have them here. Big thanks to, beyond our sponsors, the Urban Child Institute has been a partner on this event. They are truly thought leaders in the early childhood space. They have made, they've made so many investments, not just in the work of these organizations, but in research that fuels this work, that really steeps it in data and helping us know what is making a difference, what the science says, the sociologists say. So we're thrilled to have them be a part of this event. Thank you. I will also say that the Cruz Family Foundation has been a huge partner to help make our Educators of Excellence Award possible. And again, you're going to learn more about that in a minute, but that's where we get to give a cash prize to these great teachers. So I'm going to step aside. I'm going to introduce a friend of ours from the First Horizon Foundation. Jake Adams is the SVP and manager of the First Horizon West Tennessee Business Banking team. He has joined us here to give us a quick welcome and a few remarks. Jake, can you hear me?
Yes, just
Perfect.
Checking my audio, just making sure it works. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, I've had mic issues. I'm sure we all have. Well, look, I'll be brief. As you can see here on the screen, I guess over here, my name is Jake Adams with First Horizon. I'm here representing the First Horizon Foundation. Just wanted to say that we're very excited to be here with you today and to hold a conversation around early child care. Because this is such a broad topic, we will specifically look at the current ways our early child care professionals are adapting and the ways we can support their efforts to help our youth thrive. First Horizon Foundation is proud to celebrate what's right in partnership with New Memphis and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. We have a long-standing partnership with New Memphis and value the work they are doing to develop thoughtful leaders in our city. We believe that what you shine a light on grows, and in our current environment, that calls for celebrating our local champions and going the extra mile when lifting up and supporting our community. Once again, thank you everybody for joining today, and really looking forward to the discussion from our panel.
Thank you so much, Jake. All right, now we're going to honor our Educators of Excellence. So Kevin Woods, again, a dear friend of New Memphis, is our representative from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, but is also a board of trustee for New Memphis. So we're grateful to have you here. Kevin, take it away.
Again, thank you for having me. And again, as indicated, I'm Kevin Woods, Memphis Market President for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, and as indicated, a New Memphis trustee. Let me, like First Horizon did, and start by thanking you all for attending another Celebrate What's Right event. At Blue Cross, we recognize that education is essential to the overall well-being of our neighbors. We know that a quality education prepares our communities for both the challenges and opportunities of our future. We also know that inequalities exist in our education system, and we are committed to doing our part to help equip students for future success. So that's why we're excited about the panelists that we're going to hear from today. That's why we have established at Blue Cross our Blue Cross Technology Academies to prepare our high school students for careers in technology. We've doubled the number of Blue Cross Power of We scholarships from 3 to 6, where we honor outstanding minority students that are pursuing careers in healthcare, awarding each with $10,000. And during this current pandemic, Blue Cross knew that even more would be needed to support education, particularly our most vulnerable families. That's why we provided resources for free COVID testing, allocated $3.2 million to our local food banks, and have given $1 million for an Ed Connect initiative, which provides no-cost internet service to 28,000 students. New Memphis knows that great leadership is needed in every corner of our community, from the boardroom to our classrooms. Educators are essential leaders in our communities, as their impact and investments are critical to our city's future success. As such, it is important to recognize the contributions of our best educators, learn from their experiences, and support them in their growth. In 2018, New Memphis launched the Educators of Excellence Award to recognize and celebrate the work of exceptional educators. Again, we would like to thank the Cruz Family Foundation for their continued support of this prestigious award, which includes a donation to each educator to support their efforts in making this year the best it can be. As a Blue Cross employee and as a parent with 2 daughters in school, I applaud all educators for the extraordinary work you're performing during these extraordinary times. Now, please join us in celebrating the 2020 Educators of Excellence.
No. No.
I think in Memphis, you get out of it what you put in, and you get a lot out when you choose to put roots down, when you choose to find a community and really pour into it and put yourself into it in a vulnerable way. When you are vulnerable with Memphis, it gives it back.
I think as an educator, Memphis is a special place because I think this is one of few places that you can start having an impact early in your education career. I think they're looking for new talent and they're willing to develop new talent a lot quicker than larger cities are.
And so staying here in Memphis, teaching here in Memphis has been my way of, again, giving back to children what I think either I didn't get or maybe what I know that I've gotten, and I want to give that to someone else, right? You pass on the good.
There's so much good that happens here. There's so many great people, so many amazing programs that are going on that, why not be in Memphis?
The thing I wish people would know about education and what it means to be an educator is that we spend so much of our time and emotional energy thinking about other people's kids and about ways to make school a place that's safe. And it's not even about content. Like, you think a lot about content, but ultimately, I'm not sitting at home thinking, man, I wish this person could really get the thesis statement. I'm thinking, I really wish I could do something to turn her lights back on.
I wish the community would know that folks who are truly dedicated to education don't only work Monday through Friday. Folks who are truly in this thing don't have summers off.
I think that a lot of times we want children to succeed and we want to make sure that they're going to move on to greater things in life, but I think that we skip over what's most important, and that's themselves, learning how to believe in themselves, learning who they are and what they want to do.
It's my hope that all of the students that I work with and all students who are in the education system find something that makes them love school, love Memphis, love their community, and want to give back and feel successful in what they've done.
I have to be what I asked them to be. If I'm going to ask you to go hard and be excellent and maintain just this high level of quality, I also have to do that.
I think teaching is a big part of learning how to see children and people individually and not lumping them as a big sum, but then taking those individuals and creating a family atmosphere and seeing how we can bring individuals together and better the classroom, better the environment, better the world.
All right, well, again, you guys can all send your virtual love and gratitude to those 5 amazing teachers. Thank you again to the Cruz Family Foundation for putting cash in those teachers' pockets, which we know is important. Those teachers are investing in our community, so we wanted to invest back in them. So congratulations. Thank you again, Kevin. I should say, in addition to being on our New Memphis board and being the Memphis Market President of Blue Cross Blue Shield, Kevin is also, of course, on the board of the Shelby County School System. And so he is leading in so many different ways in Memphis and deeply personally understands the importance of education. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to our panelists. We have, this is the 3rd year, or is this a 4th year, Caroline? You'll have to correct me. But Caroline Bauman. It is the 4th. Okay, great. See, 2020 is like a dark hole of time, but it is the 4th year that Chalkbeat Tennessee has partnered with New Memphis to help put on this event. They are experts, obviously, in this space. They are reporting on schools. Obviously, they're reporting on education from both a state level, grassroots, local, community level. So she is the best person to guide this conversation. Caroline is the community engagement strategist for Chalkbeat Tennessee, and she is the moderator of our panel. So Caroline, I'm going to turn it over to you to do introductions of our panelists.
Thanks so much, Anna. Thrilled to be here and thrilled to kick us off. Again, I'm from Chalkbeat Tennessee. We're a news organization dedicated to writing about Tennessee schools. Before we dive in with our panelists, I'm just going to do some table setting for us to make sure we're all starting from the same place. If you didn't know, there are about 12,000 4-year-olds in Shelby County, according to the latest data that we have, and about 65% of them attended free pre-K last year. Unlike K through 12 schooling, affordable pre-K for all isn't a guarantee. In fact, just last year, city and county government, alongside Shelby County Schools, stepped in to preserve 1,000 pre-K seats that could have been lost with an expiring federal grant. And the plan with philanthropic support is to grow those number of seats over time. Research shows that students benefit greatly from both well-funded schools and access to quality early childhood education. And this is particularly important in Memphis, where 35% of children live in poverty and have limited access to many childcare services. But what quality early education is and how to measure it, when a Head Start classroom looks different from a private daycare program, looks different from a small at-home day center, is very much so up for debate. A report released early last year found that Memphis early childhood programs were doing really well in things like classroom size, teacher education level, but had room to grow when it came to curriculum and learning goals, teacher professional development, and local funding commitments. But a lot has happened in the past couple of years. Porter Leaf is building 3 new early learning academies across the city. First 8 was created with the goal to bring together enough money to pay for pre-K for any child that wants to attend. You're going to hear from some of those folks here in just a minute. But we're also in a global pandemic that has radically reshaped our lives in every way, including early education. Across the nation, 70% of childcare providers have been forced to pour additional money into their businesses to keep them operating safely, according to the Hechinger report. And although the Federal CARES Act provided some relief, advocates say it's not nearly enough. By one estimate, half of the country's licensed childcare centers are in danger of closing for good. So we have a lot to talk about today. I want to dive right into introducing our panel. We're joined today by Candace Thomas, the Executive Director of First State Memphis. And you guys can wave, but they can also read your background. Karen Harrell, Senior Vice President of Early Childhood Services at Porter Leaf. Loretta Rudd, Clinical Associate Professor and Program Coordinator for Child Development and Family Studies at the University of Memphis. And Michael Phillips, Executive Director of Sioux Casa Family Ministries. So I'd love to start us off today. We're joined by more than 100 people, which is really wonderful. Thank you so much for spending your lunch time with us. I'd love to start today with a poll question that our audience will weigh in on, as well as our panelists. So I'm going to launch the poll. Audience members, you can see it. It's a multiple choice question for you to weigh in on, and our panelists can also see it. I'm going to read it out loud for our Facebook audience, and then we'll dive in. What's one thing that could be done right now to greatly improve the economic situation for early childcare providers and better the learning environments of their students? So option one, give higher wages for early care and learning teachers, provide sick leave for early education providers, continue financial support from state and federal sources during the pandemic, offer on-site corporate-funded childcare provided by major businesses. So as our audience members are weighing in on this question, panelists, I know it's hard to pick one, but I'd love for you to pick one and briefly tell me why. So let's get started. Karen, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, it's important to unmute. First of all, thank you, New Memphis, for this opportunity, as well as the Urban Child Institute. I'm so excited to be here. One thing that you're right, all questions or our answers are very important, but the one that I want to focus on is in regards to state and local funding. I will say that it's important to continue to diversify funding. You have organizations here like Next Memphis, as well as First Aid, as well as Seeding Success, that's been very successful with securing local private dollars in order to support our early childhood community. We have programs such as Next Memphis that is really working to wrap their arms around our private daycare community. And I think that's what's most important, making sure that we're more inclusive of all early childhood educators. It's not just Head Start, it's not just pre-K, it's family day home providers, it's private childcare sector. So again, it's important to make sure that we have opportunities to diversify funding so that we can support and uplift the early childhood community.
Great, Karen, thank you. Michael, how about for you? What would you pick out of these options?
Yeah, I mean, I think higher wages always jumps out to me, especially in our in the community we work in. We work in the Latino or Latinx immigrant community, and in that community, obviously, trying to get bilingual folks into our early childhood program, we had to make a choice to set a minimum rate at which we were going to pay people. That at first my board looked at me a little crazy. But if we believe in having an excellent program, then we have to have excellent teachers. And if we believe that our teachers are excellent, then we have to be at least as close as we can get to. And so we had that choice to move that up. And that's helped us to solidify some of the core teachers that we've had. But it's still hard work getting folks to be able to stay. It's a tough churn in this business. A lot of folks that are coming and going, and a lot of it has to do with, I can't stay at this part-time $10 an hour job. I have to go get a full-time job at, we lost one employee a couple of years ago. We lost them to like Sam's Club because they had full-time with benefits, and that's something that's like, I was heartbreaking, but it was a part-time position. And so what can you say to someone in that position? So I think getting the wages up and being able to offer good benefits is a first step in getting quality people to be able to stick around to do what they really want to do, truthfully.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And that also lends itself to the professionalization of the early childcare field, which for a long time has been viewed more as less professional than it is, right? Where things like benefits and paid time off is a guarantee. So thanks for that. Loretta, how about for you? What would you choose?
Well, I, like the rest of the panel, think all of those options are important, but I do think in Memphis, Shelby County, where we have some really high-powered corporations that are clearly quite profitable, and they run 3 shifts a day, that having corporate sponsored childcare subsidized for their employees is really important, especially for those employees who are working 2nd and 3rd shifts. And while the University of Memphis has had an early care and learning facility for a number of years, it really wasn't an option for our students and staff because of the tuition rates. However, in the past 2 years, we have worked really hard to open up slots for students and staff that are subsidized through grant funding that we applied for and received through the federal government. So we feel really proud about that. And then in our collaboration with Porter Leith for the third academy that will open in Orange Mound in January 2022, we also will continue with holding slots for infants and toddlers that would be subsidized through our federal campus grant.
Great, thanks. And Candace, I'll end with you and then share our results.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline and New Memphis, for inviting me. I want to say, just like everyone else, really all of the above. I'll just mention quickly the importance of paid sick leave for early childhood providers, just because we haven't highlighted it yet, but I'm sure that everyone agrees with that. We can't expect folks to work with our youngest children without being able to take care of themselves first, right? Our well-being as an early childhood provider really shapes our relationships with young children and their families. So obviously, a strong workforce, any workforce, has strong paid leave, have other benefits that are necessary to live and thrive in our society. I would also say that one thing that's not mentioned here is the continued state and federal supports outside of the pandemic, right? So we still have so much work to do as a country to recognize early childhood and the needs of young children and their families. And so we still have so much work in the state of Tennessee, but also nationally, to really be thinking about how can we make sure that young children have high quality services at birth or prenatally. So it's not mentioned here, but it just feels like that level of advocacy is incredibly important.
Yeah, thank you, Candace. I appreciate that. One of the downsides of Zoom is there's not a write-in option, or else we could have had many more, but I think that's a great point. And so for our audience results, thanks for everyone who participated. Giving higher wages and continued financial support during the pandemic, but as Candace mentioned, in general, we're tied for our winners. So thanks for participating, folks. We appreciate it. My next question is for anyone who wants to weigh in. What unique challenges exist in the early education space, especially considering this era that we find ourselves in? And what is Memphis doing to circumvent those challenges? So would anyone like to start us off with that? Loretta, I'm looking at you.
Unique challenges. I think part of the unique challenge is, again, in terms of staff development, and availability of a living wage and paid time off. So I know we already all kind of weighed in on that in that pool, but I think those are absolutely challenges right now during since COVID. But they are challenges that have existed really probably as long as we've had childcare available for parents. So how then can Memphis meet that? I think, I mean, I've been in Memphis now 7.5 years, and I think that working together underneath this umbrella of First 8, which I think originally was People First and then Seeding Success, and now First 8 has brought together a lot of the stakeholders to really look to see how can we have this coordinated effort to provide high quality care for all children who live in Shelby County.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the difficulties of this field is its dispersed nature, right? There's not one body that can bring everyone together, and that's one of the things Memphis has looked to tackle. Karen, I'm interested to hear your perspective on this question, especially from Porter Leaf's vantage point and the services that you all provide. What have been some of the challenges this year and how have you worked on them?
Honestly, I can't help but to think about our children who transitioned from us on last year. I think about the kindergarten readiness data. Last year, we ended our school year in May, but our children went home in March. And so having to reconnect with them virtually, you have a cohort of children who not only experience the summer learning loss, which we all know is relevant, but then they had to connect with teachers virtually. One thing that we have done this year is we started the year off. I know people got sick of hearing the new normal, but we reminded our teachers that we are in this space, so therefore, what are we going to do about it? So we kicked off the school year with the support of our Teacher Excellence Program, with Shelby County Schools team, and we've trained our teachers to connect with children virtually. How do you make that connection with children is a very unique skill. And so we started the school year off with making sure that they had the resources and the support to understand how do you still make that connection and how do you prepare children for kindergarten.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Michael, I'd love to throw this over to you as well. What has Sukasa been up to this year? What challenges are y'all trying to surmount?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing that we've seen most significantly in our community, so many Spanish-speaking families, is one, I mean, there were tons of challenges that they were facing before. And so it's not like they're necessarily new challenges per se. Obviously, COVID is a big challenge in and of itself. But it's just made worse so many of the things that they were already dealing with, and the lack of connection and lack of access has just become, it's just been much worse, you know? And so we've had to work real hard to make sure that we stay connected to a lot of the families that we work alongside in the community, just to make sure that we're hearing from them, because a lot of times if we're not hearing from them and then able to either point to them to be able to speak on their behalf or speak for them in situations where that's the only way that it's going to get across. We've just been trying to make sure that we hear from them clearly so that we can represent their feelings and their concerns and their worries. And I just remember too, you know, I mean, I think at the very beginning, there was so much going on with a lot of families needing food and just trying to get bare necessity. But for a lot of our families, it really got worse in June and July. You know, and you'll remember, you know, the positive rate for COVID in the Latinx community increased dramatically in that time. And so even now in like our early childhood programs, only we have boxes that we're sending to families instead of doing in-person classes. And the same thing with our adult English classes, because so many of our families, we did survey data and we talked to them and continued to hear, and they were just traumatized. I mean, it was so bad, and it seemed like people felt like it was a surprise that it got so bad so quickly. So I think that for a lot of our families, that trauma has made them say, no, we're just going to close the door, we're going to disengage. And then when this is over, if there's a vaccine or whatever it may be, then we'll try and see if we can do things a little bit differently. So I think the key things for us have just been able to represent what their struggles have been, because those are so highly underrepresented. And then also be able to change the way we do things to meet them where they are according to what they would prefer to do.
Right. And Michael, just a quick follow-up. What has that communication looked like for you when our usual means of communication aren't available to us?
Yeah, no, I mean, we do a lot of Facebook messaging. We have like a texting app where we'll text people that way. You know, this is probably not a best practice, but every week there are some families that know me better than others, and they're just in my text messages every week, just asking how they're doing, what things are up to, and what life has been like for them. So it's been a very informal communication. I mean, trying to send out an electronic survey and get like good responses to that is almost impossible. And so earlier in the late spring, when we did our first survey, we tried to do it digitally, and we were getting like, 7% response rate, and so we just called everybody, and then we moved that up to 60+% response rate, but it's just because we called them and asked them the questions and filled it out in real time. And that's been the only way for us to get consistent responses from them, and just it's a very, you know, I think
Right.
everybody wants to hear from a real person. I
Right.
think in our community in particular, it's become really important to reach out that way.
Absolutely. And it takes a lot of time to do it that way. I just want to remind our audience that we don't have time to hear from you audibly, but we'd love to hear from you in the Q&A. So please put your questions in there. This next question, I'd love to start with Candace. As we speak, some early childcare providers are trying to quickly adapt or continuing to adapt to serve older children who are doing virtual learning while still continuing to serve young learners. So Candace, I'd love to hear from you. Can you talk about how you are seeing some early childcare providers innovate right now, whether that's through First Aid's work or otherwise, and some of the financial impetus for that innovation?
Sure. I think, you know, innovation is a word that we throw around a lot, and it's a really interesting position to be in terms of being asked to innovate during a global pandemic, right? So I think innovation in this space means how do we continue to provide as high quality of programs and services as we can while we are in a global situation that's obviously impacting our local communities greatly. So what we've seen so far, and this is not the work of First Aid Memphis, but I'm lucky to have so many colleagues who are turning friends, who are really keeping me informed about what's happening in the community as a newcomer and working from home. But as I understand, there are so many providers, as you all know, the YMCA and others who are really thinking about how do we expand our services so that children, older children who are schooling at home are able to come to a center and get services. So I think, you know, we're all like rolling up our sleeves and trying to figure out how do we best do this? What do our families needs? And how can we as a system and individual providers in that system bend and stretch to meet families' needs? You know, in terms of the financial impetus, the one amazing thing about this pandemic is that we have seen state government, the state of Tennessee has really supported the early childhood community with and childcare sector, education sector, and many others with grants and reimbursable grants for support. And so, you know, really the state has really showed up and supporting different communities for kids and families. And that's really important to talk about.
Yeah, thank you, Candace. Loretta, I'd love to throw this question over to you as well. What is going on with some of the programs that you work with, and how are you seeing them adjust right now?
Yeah, so we work with both child care centers as well as family child care homes. And so through our coordinated effort to enhance development program, we offer support, both, you know, professional development support, but also, quite frankly, social and emotional support for those directors and teachers working in those spaces. So as what we've seen is, especially in some family childcare homes who have really been providing care for children birth through 4, they have accepted some of the older siblings of their primary care for young children. They've created separate spaces, learning spaces for those children, and they've reached out to the university for support in terms of curriculum, but also materials and equipment. So that's good. We know that in the beginning in the United States, public education was the one-room schoolhouse. And as a worshiper of Maria Montessori and believing in multi-age classroom settings, I think that we have some early care and learning professionals who are doing a really good job of providing care and education in this multi-age setting, given the circumstances of the pandemic. On the other hand, it does draw staff away from those really very young children to supervise some of the older children if they don't have a good support system to help them understand how to divvy up time and space and energy. So they're in real need of support, and in support of how to secure those federal and state dollars as well.
Right. Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. Karen, I'd love to turn to you next. So parent guardian participation is a key part of this work in general, and particularly now more than ever. And so first of all, maybe just start by telling us how Porter-Leith has approached this fall and what parent participation looks like in your programs and how it's changed during the pandemic.
So yes, we have staff members that are family support workers, and our family service workers have really been the key and the glue to connecting with our parents. We know that this has been a different type of year to start off with. And so our family service workers have been feet on the ground, working with parents on how to complete an application, how do you connect virtually, what kind of supports can we still give you, and also connecting them to important resources within the community. We're still working with parents in terms of engagement. We're working with teachers and working with parents on individualizing their goals for their children. And so that connection still continues and it still remains. It's a key component of our program for not only Head Start, but also under First Aid pre-K as well. So that parent engagement piece is really critical to also teach our parents the importance of advocating for their children. This is a time now that we know that people are really have questions. They're really in need of support, whether it's social emotional support. So we have those staff members that are able to help them connect and navigate through the systems that are sometimes so difficult and challenging to connect to.
Yeah, and specifically with the social emotional support, what does that look like? What does it look like to provide social emotional support to parents right now?
So really it's making sure that, number one, that if children are in need, I can use myself, for instance. My daughter is in the 10th grade, and I guess about 2 months into the pandemic, my daughter shared that she needed someone to speak with. She needed someone to talk to because this was really difficult for her. And so being able to, even though I know the resources, it was difficult for me to find someone for her to speak with. So having that family service worker really became even more invaluable to me because I realized that having that staff support that can connect parents to either mental health support or whatever they need for their family, that's a critical part of our program, and that's what early childhood services needs. We need that comprehensive support so that we can support the whole child and not just a component of education, but the entire family and the whole child development.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Michael, I'd love to turn back to you. First of all, you mentioned the boxes that you had sent families. Tell us a little bit more about what those are and why you chose to do that.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, the main impetus for it is we were in June and July when things got so bad, we reassessed because heading into the summer, we really were planning to open and provide. It may be limited or spaced or all kinds of additional measures, but we reassessed. And so then we did a new round of survey data, and 62% of our families said they didn't feel comfortable sending their kids who were under 5 to any school for any reason. And so we said, okay, well, we've got to think differently then. And so then we came up with the idea to do what we called, we're Sukasa, and we came up with Sukaha, which box. And so it's sort of preschool in a box. We call it your zero prep, all-inclusive activity box. I've got one over here. Yes, this was a setup, everybody. And so we've got one of our little boxes, kind of looks like a house, right? Because casa means house, and so inside of that, it's everything they'll need to do activities for 4 days of sort of activities and preschool kind of things. And again, some of our families are 1 and 2 year olds. And so there's not a ton, right, at that age group that you can do besides just sort of help them to guide and think through all of those sorts of things. We have like a routine, all of that stuff. And then in addition to that box, we're also calling families and checking in on them, making sure everything is working okay. Are they having any trouble with anything? Do they understand everything okay? And we just want to make sure that they have everything they need, so they don't have to think through like, what am I supposed to be teaching? How am I supposed to teach it? Let me go find some activity somewhere. Oh wait, this is a paid teacher resource website. Do I want to pay for this for the year? You know, and imagine doing all that in like your second or third language, right? So like, it's like a completely like bonkers situation. And so we make these boxes, send them out to our families.
And Michael, how many families have y'all sent the boxes to thus far?
So we've had as many as 33 in 1 month. The number has fluctuated. Obviously, it comes and gone a little bit, but I think right now we're at about 25 or so. And so yeah, so we're working on. We'd love for that number to be higher, but for a lot of our families, my suspicion, they haven't told us this specifically, but I feel like a lot of them are probably like, everything's crazy. You know, the truth is, with virtual learning, there was a true crisis in our community too. I mean, people didn't have devices, didn't know how to turn on devices, didn't have internet, were working hard to get internet, couldn't figure out how to make the internet work, still hadn't turned on a device, didn't have their kids enrolled in school yet. They realized once they turned on I mean, like, it was just like, and that was 3 weeks in, and there were still people who had never been a day of instruction. All right. And imagine doing all that, and then you get your kids set up and they don't understand anything that's happening.
Right. And so SUCAS has found itself in very much so a support role for these families as they try to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've had to direct people to all kinds of different resources and do our very best. Shelby County Schools, I have to give them props. They've worked very hard in their bilingual department to make sure everything is available, but it just takes time for communication to get out. And it, you know, in the community, it just takes time for it to get all the way through all of the layers of the community. And so it's a long road to get to a lot of our folks who are very recent. I mean, we've got people who've been here like 2 months, 3 months at this point, you know, and they're trying to figure all this out.
Right, absolutely. And Michael, I think that's an interesting segue into this predicament early education is in right now, where it's, do you offer in-person services, which is financially difficult and also just difficult to coordinate? Do you try for virtual programming, which is also very difficult to coordinate and also can be expensive? And so Candace and Loretta, I'd love to ask both of you, you know, what are your organizations thinking about right now in terms of support for early childcare providers as they try to navigate these choices? And also, what are you seeing people in Shelby County do? You know, there's not an overall district policy for all early childcare providers, and so I think it's difficult for the public to have a sense of what's really going on. Candace, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, I think we're all, you know, none of us have lived through a pandemic, so we're all figuring out as we go. We are seeing across, in terms of pre-K in particular, we're mostly seeing virtual schooling or hybrid schooling. The first 8 partners are virtual or hybrid, and all of those partners have been working hard to make sure, as Michael's talking about, that families have access to online learning, that we have the technological resources that we need to ensure that families have access, and that there's someone that they can call, like, how do I turn on this computer? How do I log into the software? How do I use this Wi-Fi hotspot, et cetera? So, you know, we're trying to provide that level of technical assistance needed for families. And there has been other innovations happening in the early childhood space. Karen mentioned Next Memphis, and Next Memphis really worked hard to ensure that childcare providers have some of the personal protection equipment and other cleaning services, et cetera, for what was needed, especially when the pandemic first started. So I think we're all just trying to see, like, how do we do this best? What do people need? What do families need? And how do we make sure we get it to them?
Absolutely. And Candace or Loretta, would one of you mind defining Next Memphis in case our audience isn't familiar?
Sure, I'll try my best, but you all know better than me. But Next Memphis is an initiative that has been created to really shore up the infrastructure for childcare providers. So as you all know, a lot of childcare are, are small businesses, women-owned, women-run, and in this county, mostly Black and brown women-run organizations. And as you know, with any business, there's a lot of paperwork and infrastructure needs that we all have. And so Next Memphis is a innovative project that right now is at Porter Leaf, where it's really working to build the back end, to support childcare providers and the back end infrastructure needs, so that then they're able to provide high quality services to young kids. Did I get that right? Okay.
Absolutely, did well.
Okay.
Great. Loretta, just super briefly, what are you seeing the early child care providers you work with doing, and how is the university supporting?
So we have, when all this happened, we really were just like, oh my gosh, we had groups together because we through the LENA program, we provide training opportunities for childcare providers themselves. And
Loretta, I'm going to stop you really quick. What is the LENA program for our audience?
So LENA is language environmental analysis, but really it's a training program to increase adult-child interactions so that we can increase children under the age of 36 months, increase their vocabulary. We know that a child's vocabulary at age 3 is a marker of what their reading ability will be at grade 3, and then we know that's a marker in terms of high school graduation. So it's really important. And so we work, and it's set up as a 10-week, once a week training session. And we had already worked with, I don't know, probably 50 centers, as well as a whole bunch of parents individually through LENA Start. But transportation has been an issue, especially for our parents enrolled in LENA Start and LENA Home. So the pandemic, we had to pause everything and then go virtual. And so if there is a silver lining in this, in terms of parent engagement with the training program, is that they've been able to engage much more consistently because they don't have to have transportation. They can just pull us up on their electronic device, whether that's their phone or iPad or computers. So we've been really excited about that. And the same thing with our childcare professionals as well. So we've seen an increase in that participation in those programs, and also just an increase in parent engagement because their children are there all day long, as they are, which I'm the parent of 2 20-somethings who are out of the house, but watching parents talk about how the silver lining of having to shelter at home really has engaged them in more, because kids are tired of looking at screens all day, that they're more likely to be interested in putting a puzzle together or taking a walk or doing something that doesn't involve a screen. So that's a benefit, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, hey, folks, please submit some questions in the Q&A. I am watching for them, and I know we've got some coming in from Facebook as well. So I'd love to turn to some audience questions before wrapping us up. Karen, I'd love to start with you for this. So we've got a question from the audience. How are we seeing cross-sector collaboration work best during this time? How can some of our corporate businesses partner to support this work?
I think the way that corporate businesses can really support us is, what I'll say, Carolyn, is come out and see what we do. I'm a visual person, and so a lot of times you can hear us talk about our services, but until you've had an opportunity to actually visit a center, see teachers in action, see the facility, and it's hard for you to identify exactly how can you support this work. So I encourage you, if there are businesses that are listening, please schedule a tour with us, come out and visit us. Dr. Rudd already mentioned our new facilities. Next week, we will have our big event, so join in with us and tune in live remote. And just come see what it is we do. I love talking about our teachers and what they're doing in the classroom. I conducted a tour about a month ago, and they were so outdone to see a teacher standing there talking into a laptop and was just as engaged and excited as she would have been if she was sitting there leading circle time with 20 children. So I would say just come out to see what we do in order to continue to support our vision.
Absolutely. Please.
On that same note, what can corporations and businesses do? First of all, you can advocate for quality early care and learning and for higher minimum standards for individuals who work in this field. This state graciously, I don't know if that's the right term, but provides those 2 years of free tuition for community colleges. And then TECTA also provides funding for college courses beyond those 2 years. The U of M has, sorry, I have to plug this, but we have 2 fully online degree programs for early care and learning and early intervention specialists. So really supporting the field as a profession that sets the foundation for all future learning. If we want to move beyond the 30% of children who are reading at grade level at 3rd grade, we have to do better in that 0 to 4 space. And it's going to require those people with much stronger or deeper roots to how we get the appropriate funding for the educators themselves who are working in the 0 to 4 space.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Loretta. Michael, we also had a question about just general community support. So how can the community be supportive beyond business leaders? So, talk about that from SUCASA's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with SUCASA, we have for our SUCAHA boxes, like a real practical thing. I guess everyone's plugging, so I'll plug something too. We actually have what we call a neighbor box. So people can go on and they can buy a box for a family. So we have a number of families, especially our Spanish-speaking families, that have been devastated by the effects of COVID. And we don't want to have to, I keep telling families, if you're worried about the cost, because we do have a nominal fee associated with the cost of the box, but we keep telling families, if that's the problem, we'll figure it out. Let's just get the box moving, and then you let us know how that's working for you, and we'll work on that part of the process and not worry so much about the rest of it. So you can go on our website, sucasamemphis.org, and there's a section called SUCAHA, S-U-C-A-J-A, SUCAHA, that for where you can order a neighbor box is what we're calling it. So that's one specific way with us. And I just think, generally speaking, I mean, I've got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. They're in virtual learning centers. My 5-year-old would rather be wrestling in the living room than doing anything. So him sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours a day, he's not been a stellar virtual student, to say the least. And so, as a parent who gives me permission to just let go of my parenting instincts for a second and just say, you know what, he's not going to be totally engaged in his virtual school, and we're okay with that, and you can be okay with that, and that's going to be fine. I think anything that gives me a little bit of respite from the pressure of all of this is a huge support. And I think anyone in the community who sees a parent with small children, we can just make a habit of saying it's going to be okay. They'll be fine, right? We just have to keep going, keep working hard, and be kind and gracious with each other, and know that everybody on every side of this is trying to do their very best for the kids, and that, at some point we'll be in a more stable situation, and we can begin to assess how we move into sustainable improvements at that point. But right now, everyone just needs help and support to remain secure and safe and sane through all of this, I think are the key points.
Yeah, grace upon grace upon grace. Absolutely.
Caroline, can I jump in really quickly?
Please.
I just want to underline what Michael said. I know that we are so worried about children's education and their educational attainment, but right now, I've been saying to people, we just have to love on our children. Like, we are, as a society, we are going through so much. As a Memphis and Shelby County community in particular, we're going through a lot with the pandemic, and we're expecting children to sit in front of a screen. We can barely sit in front of a screen as adults all day. And so to me right now, like getting a child in your lap to read a book, or letting them rumble around on the floor with their sibling or with a neighbor or whatever it is. Well, be careful with the neighbor because of COVID, but I just think that it's important that we need to be thinking about a child's well-being, and the well-being comes first. And then from well-being, then they can engage in education. But if they're not well, if they're not rumbling around, if they're not sitting in your lap while reading a book, then we're not gonna be able to engage them in strong education. So I would say that. And the only other quick thing I would say for the community, both the corporate and non-corporate community, is just to acknowledge and recognize that early childhood starts way before 4-year-olds, starts way before pre-K. It starts prenatally even. And so we need to just be thinking holistically about young children, because when we don't, then when they get to 4 years old and they get to pre-K, then we start to worry. Whereas we need to be thinking about kids and families from the very, very beginning. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that there can be a misunderstanding of when early childhood education starts, right? And that's one of the things that I know y'all are working to combat. So I've got one last question, and that was actually a perfect segue. And so we'll end with Karen. Somebody in our audience asks, can Karen speak to the benefits of an infant and early childhood mental health approach to services during COVID?
Yes, we have early Head Start program, and as Dr. Thomas already stated, it starts at prenatal. And so in our early Head Start center, we actually decided to open. And we decided to open because we knew that there was a need to really provide care and loving support to our children and our families. And so in terms of infant mental health, we start prenatally. In addition to that, we have support from mental health providers. Our teachers know the importance of loving on their children. They know the importance of talking. They know the importance of just being there and being a support for their entire family. So that component is so vitally important for our early Head Start program, as well as our Head Start program, as they transition from prenatal up to preschool.
Thanks so much, Karen. I want to thank our panelists. I wish I was up on stage with you, heading back to eat our slices of cake, but alas, this has still been a really fun panel. Thank you to New Memphis for partnering with us. Again, we love doing this event with y'all. My plug, if I'm allowed one, is one of the ways to contribute as a community member or as a business leader is to stay informed. You got to know what's going on to know how to help. And one of the ways to stay informed is to follow Chalkbeat's work. So I'll throw a link in the chat, but thank you all. And Anna's going to take us home.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. You did a fantastic job. To all of our panelists. You guys were truly amazing. I've learned a lot, and I thought I knew a good bit about the early childhood space, so thank you. Again, you'll see on our next slide our scan code for our survey. Please do, if you will, just take a minute of your time so that we know what we're doing, that we're doing it right. If there's any suggestions you have, we're always open eared about that. We also have we have a call to action for you. So we wanted to ask that each of you commit to contributing one of the following ways to take what we learned today and really live into it. So some next steps for you to support the work of early childhood professionals, the caregivers at home. We're all working tirelessly to ensure that our next generation is equitably supported. So these are your three options here, that you would invest in organizations like the Urban Child Institute that is funding, fueling, educating the community in this way, that you would volunteer at organizations like Arise to Read and educate yourself about the education sector in our community through Chalkbeat Tennessee, as Caroline said. So we ask that before you leave today, you share which action you are going to commit to take by dropping a 1, 2, or 3 in the chat. So do that now if you would. Excellent, excellent, love it. Well, we appreciate it. Again, we want to both create a space for learning, but we also want to build advocates. So we hope that you walk away from this luncheon today feeling empowered to go and help in one of these ways or in any other way that you feel will support our early childhood efforts in Memphis. So thank you again to our wonderful panels. Truly so grateful to have you. Thank you to everybody who tuned in today, and I hope you have a great rest of the afternoon.